So in the last video, I talked about why you shouldn't be a UI UX designer, but in this video, I'm going to be talking about why you should. And being a UI UX designer myself, I think I have a lot more to say about why you should become a UI UX designer. So let's get into it. The first reason is because there's still so much space in it, and it's something that AI cannot replace, because at the core of UI UX design, I think it's very human. It's a very human job, and empathy is so important as a skill in order to understand and empathize with users. And I think no matter how developed AI can get, it'll never be able to fully replicate that human touch and human perspective. So UI UX design as a career is definitely a very safe choice if you do want to venture into the tech scene without being overtaken by the tech itself. So that's one thing that I really love about UI UX design, is that your humanity and your empathy and human aspects are so vital when it comes to your job. The next thing is that user and design-centric companies are the industry standard now. If your company or your app or your product does not care about users or does not have a good user experience, I think it's going to fall out of the market very, very quickly. So it's so important to have a good UI UX designer on any team, in any company. So in that light, I think it would be a very long time before there's any shortage of jobs. I think one thing that I've noticed in myself as well as a designer is that sometimes I'll slip into a scarcity mindset. I'll start to fear, like, are there enough job positions out there for UI UX designers? Because it's such a competitive space and there's so many talented and wonderful designers out there who are excelling beyond just their design skills. I would worry sometimes, but really, I think what's amazing is that no matter how competitive it gets, there's always going to be something for every designer, because every designer has a different niche, different interest, different way of working, different connections, and there's so many different things that come into play. So even though there's competition, I think the fact that companies are now prioritizing user-centric design, I think there's not going to be a shortage of UI UX design jobs. So there's no need to worry if you do want to become a UI UX designer. The next thing which I love so much is that there's so much room for growth as a UI UX designer. I am someone who loves constantly improving. I think that's one of the things that really keeps me going. So the fact that with UI UX design, there's always things changing in the industry, there's always new things to learn, new updates in the software, new updates in design trends and styles. I think I love that kind of change and being able to learn new things as I go. So if you are the same, if you love constantly learning and improving, then UI UX design could be really appealing to you. Besides growth in yourself, there's also growth in pay and salary. There's also so much room for career growth in a UI UX design job, but also there's a pretty high medium pay or salary as a UI UX designer, so that could be really appealing for people as well. The next thing, along with constantly improving, is that there's so many resources available online. It's so easy to find. So it's not only fun to keep improving, but it's also easy to do so because there are a wealth of resources out there, and these designers in the UI UX design space are so willing to share and help. So it's a very nice space to be in with a really great community. The next thing is that it can be really meaningful work. I think there are so many surveys being conducted and done, and they find that it's not so much that people don't like working, it's just they want to really have meaningful work to do and to do things that they find fulfilling. And I'm definitely the same. And as a UI UX designer, because you're connecting so much with the users and trying to create something that will really, really help the potential consumers and customers that you have, I think it can be very, very meaningful, because you'll be really working on a solution or some kind of problem and solving it through your designs. So I think that's really meaningful. Another thing that I love about UI UX design is that it allows you to be creative, but there's also this logical and data-driven aspect to it, and I think that's amazing. If you like combining artistic creativity with something a bit more mathematical and scientific, things like psychology, things like data and analytics, and if you're able to combine that with design or whatever you are working on, I think that is really something that UI UX is about. Of course, you are designing something really aesthetic and really visually appealing, but you also want it to be functional, and that's where you analyze the analytics and the research to see if the two are blending well together. And if you like that kind of thing, then UI UX design could be for you. Lastly, UI UX design is relatively easy to get into. If you think about the barrier to entry, look at jobs like investment banking or even the really technical tech scene like coding and software engineering. I think that's pretty challenging to get into as well. But with UI UX design, because there are so many resources out there, so many boot camps, so many different courses online, and it's relatively easy to pick up the tools as well. So UI UX design, I think, is a really, really great space to get into. That is all for this video. Do follow our Instagram link down below. And on that note about it being easy to get into UI UX design, I'll be making a more in-depth video about how to get into UI UX design, perhaps a roadmap roadmap for a self-taught UI UX designer of sorts. See you in the next video.